You woke up at 6:14 a.m. Not because something called to you, because something buzzed at you. And before your eyes adjusted, before your mind assembled itself into anything resembling a person, you were already moving. Shower, coffee, emails before the water boils, calendar check before the first sip. 14 meetings, 3 deadlines, 2 messages marked urgent by people who do not know what urgency means. You moved through the morning like a machine that had forgotten it was once an animal. Efficient, responsive, fast. And by 11:47 p.m., when you finally collapse into the sheets, something pinches you at the back of your skull. Not pain, not sadness. Something worse. The quiet suspicion that you were busy all day. And alive for none of it. That nothing you did today will matter in 5 years. That your calendar was full, but your life was somehow empty. What if the thing you call productivity is actually the thing devouring you? Nearly 2,000 years ago, a Roman philosopher saw this trap with terrifying precision. His name was Seneca, and in 49 AD, he wrote an essay called On the Shortness of Life that diagnosed a disease most of humanity still does not know it carries. Here is the paradox, and it will sound like an insult before it sounds like the truth. Life is not short. You are wasting it. That was Seneca's central, unforgiving claim. Not that death comes too soon, but that we live as though we have been promised infinite time, and then act shocked when the account runs dry. We spend years chasing titles that will not follow us into the ground. We surrender decades to obligations we never consciously chose. We pour hours into maintaining appearances for people whose opinions we will not remember on our deathbed. And then, in the final years, we look back and wonder where it all went. Seneca drew a distinction that most people still cannot see. The difference between being occupied and being engaged. Between motion and meaning. The occupied person fills every hour, responds to every demand, stays late, wakes early, measures their worth by exhaustion. Their calendar is a monument to other people's priorities. The engaged person does something radically different. They choose. They select what deserves their finite, irreplaceable hours, not out of laziness, out of clarity. Seneca's verdict on the occupied life was surgical. The busy man, he wrote, is engaged in everything except living, not failing at life, not struggling with life, missing it entirely, while appearing to everyone around him impossibly productive. Seneca cataloged these people nearly 2 millennia ago, and the portraits are so precise they could have been written yesterday. The man consumed by ambition, who climbs without ever asking what waits at the top. The woman drowning in social obligation, who manages everyone's crisis except the one growing silently inside her own chest. The accumulator, who hoards wealth he will never live long enough to enjoy. The people pleaser, who has given away so many hours to others that he has become a stranger in his own life. Seneca called them the occupati, the occupied, and he did not pity them. He diagnosed them. Now update the portrait. The founder who glorifies 18-hour days as though sleep is a moral failure. The professional whose inbox is at 0, but whose inner life is bankrupt. The scroll addict who consumes 4 hours of content nightly and calls it relaxation. The productivity obsessive who optimizes every minute but has not had an original thought in months. The person who wears exhaustion like a medal, who says I'm so busy the way a soldier says I was in combat, as proof of worth, as identity. Seneca would recognize all of them. Because busyness has not changed in 2,000 years. Only its costumes have. Here is where Seneca's observation becomes genuinely disturbing. You lock your doors. You guard your wallet. You protect your property with passwords, cameras, contracts, and lawyers. But your time? You give it to anyone who asks. You surrender hours to meetings that could have been one sentence. You donate entire evenings to people who drain you and return nothing. You hand over your mornings to algorithms designed to keep you watching, not living. And you never protest. You never feel the theft, because unlike money, time is taken so gradually, so invisibly, that most people do not realize they have been robbed until they are already poor. Seneca saw this with devastating clarity. In his letters to Lucilius, his very first letter, he wrote to his friend with a single urgent request: guard your time. He observed that people are remarkably stingy with their property and their money, yet reckless with the one resource it would be right to guard ruthlessly. Time, the only possession you cannot earn back, the only currency that never replenishes. Every minute spent is spent forever. No refund, no extension. And yet we treat our hours like they are infinite. Like time is a river that will never run dry. Like there will always be another morning to begin the thing we keep meaning to begin. There will not always be another morning. And somewhere, quietly, you already know this. You simply prefer not to look. So what was Seneca's answer? Not withdrawal. Not idleness. Not some ancient version of quiet quitting. Seneca's remedy was not to do less. It was to direct your life toward what actually matters before the account empties. Self-reflection. Not the shallow kind performed for social media. The brutal, private kind. The kind where you sit with yourself in real silence and ask whether the life you are living reflects the life you actually want. Or whether you have been living someone else's blueprint and calling it ambition. Genuine relationships, not networks, not contacts, not followers. People who see you clearly, speak to you honestly, and whose presence makes you more yourself, not less. Philosophy, not as an academic exercise, but as a practice of asking the only questions worth asking. What is a good life? Am I living one? What would I change if I could not lie to myself? And here is where Seneca offers something remarkable. He argued that you can gather all ages into your own. By studying the great minds across history, by reading the thinkers who wrestled with the same questions centuries before you were born, time collapses. You sit with Marcus Aurelius. You argue with Socrates. You are no longer a person trapped inside a single anxious decade. You become a citizen of all time. This is presence over frantic motion. Depth over velocity. The life examined over the life merely executed. So what does this actually look like? Not as philosophy. As Tuesday. Start with an audit, not of your goals, but of your hours. Track where your time actually disappears for 1 week. Not where you believe it goes, where it actually goes. You will be disturbed. Most people are. Because the gap between how we imagine we spend our days and the reality is one of the most humbling reckonings available to a person. Then, practice refusal. Say no to one obligation this week that does not serve your life. Not your career, not your image, your life. The distinction is everything. Learn to tell the difference between urgent and important. Urgent things scream. Important things wait quietly until they are gone forever. Your inbox is urgent. Your health is important. That notification is urgent. That conversation you have been putting off with someone you love is important. And protect unstructured time. Time with no agenda, no optimization, no deliverable. Time to think without an audience. Time to read something that will not help your career. Time to be a person instead of a function. This is not anti-ambition. Seneca himself was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. He understood desire and power intimately. This is anti-aimlessness. The enemy is not doing. The enemy is doing without ever asking why. Come back now to 6:14 am. The alarm. The buzz, the hand already reaching. What if, before you touch anything, before the world enters, you claimed 60 seconds for yourself? Not to meditate perfectly, not to journal in a leather notebook, just to notice that you are alive, that the day has not yet been claimed, that your first thought could belong to you. Seneca wrote to Lucilius, Omnia Lucili aliena sunt. Tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything is foreign to us, Lucilius. Time alone is ours. He wrote that nearly 2,000 years ago. To a friend, as an act of urgency, because he understood what most people spend their entire lives avoiding, that the days are long, but the years are merciless, that the person you intend to become is waiting on the other side of all the busyness you have not yet been willing to question. You are not too busy to live. You are choosing busyness over living. Every single day, usually before you are even fully awake. And Seneca's challenge, the one that has survived 2,000 years of history and still lands like something newly written, is this. At the end of your life, when you look back at the hours, which ones will you have actually lived? And more importantly, are any of those hours today